Today, we're discussing whether Reddit can work as a demand generation channel so you can see if it's something worth exploring. We're going to share the pitfalls, things to avoid as well, some thoughts on perhaps why some people's approaches haven't quite worked. So, hopefully, if you want to give it a go, you've got a great framework and some guardrails to help test it out. Welcome to the B2B Playbook. We built this channel for small B2B marketing teams who want to drive more revenue for their business. Every week, we're showing you how to create more demand for your brand step by step using our 5Bs framework. So if you're time poor, resource strapped, but you still want to make a big impact on your business, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below so you don't miss an episode. Welcome back to the B2B Playbook. Today, we're discussing whether Reddit can work as a demand generation channel. Check it out, B2B marketers. If you've been thinking about Reddit, if it's been on your mind, we're going to go deep into it. Kevin, we are into season 6 of the show. We spent seasons 1 to 5 of the B2B Playbook giving away our 5Bs framework for demand generation, for proper, sustainable B2B marketing. Go back and listen to these if you haven't already. For those who are just tuning in with us for the first time or who want a little more context on what those 5Bs are all about, Kev, what are they?
Well, our 5Bs listeners, be ready, be helpful, be seen, be better, and be the best. That's really our framework for doing B2B marketing. It starts with deeply understanding your dream customers, then developing relationships of trust with them, particularly online. And then once you have that content to help you be helpful, how do you amplify and focus in that content towards the right people who should be in your funnel? In Be Better, we looked at how to optimize your B2B marketing process. And finally, in Be the Best, we talked about some of the advanced strategies and tactics that guys at the bigger end of town employ and how you can use those in your own marketing as well.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. And as I said, listeners and viewers, today we're discussing whether Reddit can work as a demand generation channel so you can see if it's something worth exploring. We're going to share the pitfalls, things to avoid as well, some thoughts on perhaps why some people's approaches haven't quite worked. So hopefully, if you want to give it a go, you've got a great framework and some guardrails to help test it out. Kevin, I think you're a bit of a Reddit user yourself, maybe a little more so than me. Can you maybe give our listeners a bit more context on why we're discussing Reddit today?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's very topical at the moment, particularly since Reddit has entered a data share agreement with Google to effectively train Google's AI models, Gemini in particular, on delivering better responses. So they're actually using Reddit's data now to train the AI models. While that in itself isn't all that interesting for your average Reddit user or potentially people in advertising, it is actually some of the consequential things that came from that is quite interesting. So you might have noticed that Reddit actually is becoming more and more prevalent in search results. So if you search things now, a lot more Reddit results come up, and that's Google looking to learn from those. They're adjusting their algorithms as well. So at least in the short to medium term, Reddit is likely to have an outsized organic reach from the content in their threads. And the second thing that's quite interesting about all this is that Reddit themselves actually made some quite controversial claims on LinkedIn quite recently, where they said the second biggest B2B marketing platform, presumably after LinkedIn, but apparently they have a lot of B2B audiences on their platforms. And in this episode, we wanted to talk about some of those claims. We wanted to talk about where Reddit can sit within a B2B marketing process and where we see opportunity and what to avoid as well.
I'm excited for this one, Kevin. For me, if I'm looking to evaluate a service or a piece of software, or even just to know the truth on whether the person on that crappy reality TV show I'm watching has genuine feelings for the person they supposedly fell in love with, I turn to Reddit because it's so much harder to fake information there because the community can really sniff it out. So I think it's going to be great to dig into this one.
Yeah, let's dive right into that, George. And maybe let's talk first about why there might be B2B intent on Reddit as they claim. Second biggest B2B marketing platform, as they say. Is that true? If you go back to your dream customer preferences, that might give you an indicator of whether Reddit is a particular platform that they get the information from. Potentially for your set of dream customers, they might actually go to Reddit quite a lot. Certainly for myself, as George mentioned before, I do go on Reddit a lot. I do read some of the marketing forums and things like that, and the threads that talk about marketing and the latest developments, just to keep a pulse on what's happening, what's general consumer sentiment on different things. And so certainly there is B2B intent. Obviously, I'm in that space. I'm talking about that context. And obviously the way that Reddit's set up, they have a lot of discussions, as George alluded to there. They have a lot of discussions about certain pieces of software that businesses might use and might ask for different people's experiences from those engagements to get real honest opinions. I think I even read somewhere in life advice list, as someone actually said, if you want people's real opinion on things, go onto Reddit because you'll find real people arguing about it. Obviously, we're not talking about those people who are maybe being a bit sarcastic and not taking it seriously, but reading between the lines, you can certainly get a lot of good discussion. And if it so happens that your dream customers do prefer or do go on Reddit, then certainly it's a potential channel to have B2B intent on. And certainly for George and myself, we've both had experience of using Reddit as that tool to get a little bit more information or honest information about a particular product or service. Second, I think it's important to call out again that organic visibility that's coming from that data agreement with Google, because they're training so much of their models, including obviously the search algorithm to a certain extent on Reddit data. That's what's making Reddit results a lot more visible in those search results. And so naturally, there's going to be a lot more visibility in the organic search for Reddit, which means there's going to be more B2B intent being exposed to Reddit results. So I think certainly that indicates that B2B intent is going to be growing on Reddit if it's not there already. And finally, I think you can just stop and think about user behavior. Reddit is a forum where people are genuinely asking questions, have queries that they want to source real opinions on. That's what people go to Reddit for. Sometimes it's for a bit of a laugh and to read other people's comments. But if you have a serious question and you're going to the right forums, and a lot of them are moderated quite closely, then you're likely to find people discussing the real benefits, bad, the good of different products and services. So rather than having search optimized results or ads coming up in a search engine setting, on Reddit, you're much more likely to get real answers to queries of people asking real questions. And that in itself is a very valuable indicator of what people are having problems with, what people are looking at as potential solutions for those problems that might be quite relevant to your particular business offering.
So, Kev, if our listeners and viewers are thinking, okay, but is Reddit right for me? I would say, based on everything you've just said, we've got to go back to those foundational principles that we probably discussed at some point in the first 10 episodes of the B2B Playbook, which is, okay, review your dream customers, look at the buying committee and see, is that somewhere that your dream customers hang out? Do they actually go to Reddit? And second of all, is that a good channel for you to be in given the context of that channel? So very often LinkedIn is seen as a premium channel, but we would always argue that it's worth it because people go to LinkedIn because they're either looking for new business opportunities, they're looking to change their job, whatever it might be. You're in that mindset. That's the context of why you're in that channel. It's not exactly the same with Reddit, but Reddit, if you find your audience are there and they're engaging with each other and they're discussing certain products or services or ways to do things better in the same way that you check out different marketing forums, Kev, then they are doing that in a great context. That is a good place for you to insert yourself. So remember, is my dream customer hanging out there? Number two, what is the context of that channel? There's a good chance that your audience are on Reddit, and there's a good chance that the context is relevant and a good place for you to be. Not every impression is made equal, right? Not every impression, like a billboard, is not the same as a LinkedIn ad, is not the same as a Reddit ad, is not the same as interrupting someone while they're browsing family photos on Facebook. They're all different. So think about the context.
Let's have a look at also the flip side, what to avoid when you're looking at using Reddit as a potential marketing channel in a B2B context. And I think the main one that traditionally marketers have a perception of is that Reddit is not great for ads. And I don't think we can argue with that. Certainly, we've had examples, and we'll go through one in a second, where someone has tested that case. When you look at Reddit, it's really a space to be genuine, and it's a much better opportunity to work your way in because it's that same context of people who are there for genuinely helpful information, who have a genuine inquiry that they're trying to get answers to. And they're naturally very open to criticizing straightforward sales or inaccurate claims that come within those discussions. They're trying to imagine you're trying to get a piece of helpful information to answer your question, and you're just getting hit over the head by people trying to sell or ads that pop up selling a particular product that, even if it's really relevant to your particular query, it's not really what you're looking for generally when you're in that Reddit context. You're actually asking a question. You want a little bit more information. You just want to learn a little bit about the problem itself and potential solutions, not to be clobbered over the head with the sales pitch. So that's why I think for a lot of Reddit users or marketers who have tried Reddit before, when you run pure ads on Reddit, it just doesn't work. Aside from the fact that there's the bot traffic and what have you, that context within Reddit just doesn't really set itself up for ads or being very receptive to ads. It's not an audience that's receptive to that sort of marketing. But having said that, it is that great opportunity and space of just being helpful. So it comes back to our idea that if you want to build relationships of trust online, you have to give the value upfront. You have to give that helpful information upfront. And I think Reddit in that context is the perfect solution for that.
Kev, would you say then that of the 5 stages of awareness, unaware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware, most aware, Reddit, like the way that you're engaging there, they're really those problem aware and solution aware kind of people, right? Like they're really looking to explore those problems. And if they have a set of problems, they don't want to be like shoved your product information down their throats. Like they don't want that. They want to explore different solutions, and it needs to feel like it's coming from independent people with nothing to gain from it. Is that probably fair to say?
100%. And I would say it even goes back to that unaware stage. Some of the queries don't even really know what they're looking for. A lot of the questions in that context on Reddit might be, I have this problem. I'm not sure if I'm even Googling the right thing to find solutions for it. So you're in a much earlier stage of some of those queries. Certainly there are ones that are a little bit further along who are specifically asking, have you worked with this particular company? Do you have any feedback, good or bad, on that? And I think that's where it's a very powerful tool or particular channel for B2B businesses where they can dive in and provide that value. And then from that, they can really be visible and seen as a good value adder. And ideally, what you want is for other people to start mentioning your product or service over time, or mentioning you personally as the person representing your brand on that particular forum, to call you out and say, hey, do you have any opinions on this particular brand within the industry? And you can give an honest opinion and assessment, and people will really appreciate that a lot more than a pure ad. And I think because of that context, because you're able to give that helpful content without any pretext of it being an ad, it's actually a very valuable source of information as well. So for small businesses who potentially are just starting out or who are struggling to get that better understanding of their dream customers through customer interviews, this is potentially a low lift avenue for you to start being helpful at the same time as gather really valuable information about your dream customers as well. And again, because it's an anonymous setting, you're more likely than those customer interviews to get some of those critical and truthful opinions about your particular offering, rather than a customer interview setting where people are potentially a bit uncomfortable giving as critical or truthful an assessment as they would in an anonymous setting.
So, Kev, all signs point to a business needing to be really genuine to work their way in here. We've always said that anytime you identify like a community where your dream customer's hanging out, you can either work your way in or you can buy your way in. Our preference is you work your way in initially, earn their trust, and then you can look at buying your way in. And it seems like that's what you're really suggesting with Reddit. So that is all well and good if you are the owner of the business, or if you're like a thought leader as a CEO, or you're a subject matter expert. But for the marketers in there that are selling products, services to non-marketers, that becomes a little more challenging, right? Because they can't go in and be the person posting on Reddit offering helpful advice to, let's say, engineers, for example, when they're not engineers themselves. So would the approach be more to try and enable your internal subject matter expert to get into that community? Is that the approach?
I think it's a balance, right? It's very hard to get your internal subject matter experts to be jumping onto Reddit all the time and answering some of these queries. Ideally, they're either doing that organically already or they have somebody who helps them do that. So potentially you could take a list of questions that you've seen are relevant on Reddit, take that to a subject matter expert, maybe brainstorm and put together some answers. They don't have to be long, given it's such an informal setting. And that's the beauty of Reddit as well. You don't need to have very polished, creative, or anything like that in terms of messaging to be on there. You can simply have that conversation with the subject matter expert with a list of queries, and then you can go back and just dump in some very helpful information from your subject matter expert and just disclaim it. Say, this is from XYZ company. This is our internal expert's opinion on this particular matter. If you have any further questions, please let me know. I'm more than happy to pass that on. And just to be seen as that helpful resource for a particular community, I think that would be much more powerful. And again, it's a lot less low lift than having the subject matter expert themselves having to appear within a particular Reddit forum. But having said that, I think it's also a great space to test messaging as well. So, say you have your subject matter expert content, but potential framing of that response can be a little too technical because it comes from maybe a very engineer heavy background. Maybe that works within the Reddit context, maybe it doesn't. And actually, Reddit provides you with a very good setting to test some of that messaging. So potentially you could answer a particular query in one way and then see if that sort of gets understanding. Potentially you could reframe it when a similar query comes up so that you can actually figure out what best conveys the message that you want and how to frame it with effectively a real live audience to look at that creative that are actually in your dream customer profile so they can really tell you exactly what messaging you should be going to market with. And that's actually a very interesting use of Reddit. You're using this organic channel to figure out what messaging is best for your particular audience. And then you can put marketing dollars behind that in other channels, potentially using that messaging then in LinkedIn, in Meta, whatever might be relevant to your particular business or your particular dream customers. And you can go to market with a message that you've already pre-tested against Reddit as well. So a nice free layer of testing, but slightly more at scale within Reddit as well.
Kev, if we were to think about how to apply this for us, can we maybe try and do that? So if the B2B Playbook wanted to start running some advertising on Reddit, it sounds like running an ad for our B2B incubator program is probably not the best place. You want to look for some more helpful content first. Would that be fair?
Yeah, definitely. So you might look into the different marketing subreddits and try and find those queries where people are specifically asking about questions around how do I deal with rising CPLs? How do I deal with B2B marketing in the context of a very sales driven environment or company? And basically, all those queries that relate to the problems that we have identified that we solve for our dream ICP. So, the people that come through our incubator program might have questions or difficulties like, oh, I just need to get a demand generation system going, but I don't have the time of day to get it going. I don't have that alignment with the sales team, and I have this difficulty working closely with the sales team. That's potentially where you can jump in and add a bit of value. Maybe some insights that we've seen from the incubator from people going through it and the sort of solutions that have worked for them. We can share that and obviously be very clear to disclaim that we obviously own the course, but here's some helpful insights that potentially could be helping some of these queries. And if they find value in that, it's pretty natural for them to dig a little further into the B2B incubator and find out a little bit more and see if it's relevant for them. But I certainly wouldn't go over the hard sell with the ads. I think it's really important to use that channel as that tool for being helpful.
What about just using it to push out our podcast to people? Presumably, we can identify B2B marketers on Reddit, be a lot of different forums around that, and pushing people to our episode that basically goes over our framework for B2B marketing. It's like a summary episode, a summary article of our 5Bs framework. There's no gated content, there's nothing like that. It's just pure information delivery. Do you think something like that would work?
I still think if you're running in an ad format, that would be difficult. I would certainly mention it as a resource that people can go to, as a free resource in particular, that they can refer to if they want to get some of the templates and the concepts and more information. Obviously, a very long Reddit message doesn't get a very good point across. So it's important to use a pithy response just to have the main helpful points in there. And if we were doing that, we'd certainly call out the B2B playbook for people to check out as well. I think organically that will have a lot more reach. And actually, I think it's more interesting as a channel because it's more similar to YouTube where the content lasts for longer. Whereas on social media, on LinkedIn and Meta, some of your posts might die after a week, 2 weeks, a month, maybe a few months max. And then it really just disappears into the ether. No one really engages with it anymore. Whereas a Reddit post, people will search these similar queries over time and they will keep popping up over time in the search results within Reddit results itself. So it's more akin to YouTube and the longevity of the content. So even if you don't get a lot of engagement initially on a particular post, even years later, you'll potentially still be getting eyeballs on those kind of recommendations, resources, and things like that. And coming back to that a particular example of calling out the podcast, I would certainly call out other helpful resources along the way. Potentially, our podcast isn't the way that people like to consume our content. We would certainly give them other resources that we think are valuable in the space that potentially someone would prefer. And that really lives up to that name of being helpful.
Okay, all right. That makes a lot of sense, Kev. So it's a great opportunity and a great space to just be as helpful as possible. And if you're running anything as an ad, it better be like damn helpful and it probably should speak the language of your ICP as well.
Yes, exactly. You have to really align, just like any other piece of helpful content, with your ICP's language, with their pain points, and with their problems and everything along that track, potentially even showing some resources that are very helpful to them. I think a really good example of sharing helpful resources is the financial independence forums that tend to happen around Australia. Quite a few of them share templates for calculators for calculating projections of financial situations, savings rates, and things like that. So potentially we could be sharing a lot of the resources and templates that we have in relevant queries because people do get a lot of value out of those. I think people will be much more likely to trust you as a brand if you're sharing a lot of that content, a lot of those helpful templates up front. Another great example, again from the B2C space potentially, is a brand called Ausbeds here in Australia. They're also on the Ozbargain forums, as we spoke about before. Ausbeds do this particularly well, where they generally out helpful advice within these forums. The guy who gives out that information from Ausbeds, he's the owner there. He's obviously very technical when it comes to all things mattress related and beds related, and explains his reasoning in detail about any recommendations he gives. But he isn't afraid to plug competitors where they're most suitable as well. So he's actually quite aware of the market. He tells people if a particular scenario suits a particular customer, potential customer, to go to a competitor, he will actually plug them and say they actually have that best product for that particular use case. But it's also very clear from his messages what they do better. So it leaves that decision making up to the customer, as it always is. But by being very transparent, very honest with that insight that he's giving, he's helping educate the marketplace. And he's also finding a lot of relevant information about what really matters to potential customers, which means he can continue to improve his product, his offering, at the same time as being seen as a very engaged expert within the space. So building a lot of brand equity at the same time as learning about your dream customers. I think it's two birds in one stone, and it makes a lot of sense to be in Reddit in these kind of forum scenarios and being helpful.
It's something that's been lost, Kevin, and it's something that we speak with Adam Mandarovich about a fair amount. And it's that we've lost that consultative approach. If you are not the right solution for someone, instead of trying to shove your solution down their throat and trick them into buying, where they're just going to churn at customer success eventually, just say we're not the right fit. But you should have a network of people that you can refer them to. And guess what? If you help them and send them in a better direction, then you can easily ask the question back, do you know anyone else who might be a great fit for us? Like, you've given them something, and now all of a sudden they might be more likely to return the favor. Or if you don't outright ask them, I guarantee you that they are more likely to refer you to a friend or to a colleague when they actually need your service or solution. So that art of being consultative, it has just gone. It should be a business basic, and this is a great way to bring it back.
And I'll give real proof of that particular point. Back to that Ausbeds example, because his engagements on Reddit built so much trust with me, you know what? I ended up buying a mattress from them. I did end up buying a bed frame from a competitor that he mentioned that he said probably produces the best bed frames at this time in Australia. And because of that helpful engagement and because of how happy I am with the bed since then, I continue to advocate for Ausbeds. I tell other people when they come up with that query in my own life that potentially they should have a look at Ausbeds as their first port of call. And obviously, I'm becoming that referrer just because I've had that good experience. And based on the comments that I've read from those threads where he continues to add value, it seems very clear that the same thing is happening with more and more people. More and more people are seeing those comments, not necessarily engaging with that particular thread themselves, but certainly are referring other people just like I am.
So you're pretty unlikely, Kevin, to see Reddit appearing in your attribution reports, like especially a last click and then some kind of conversion in your CRM. You've got to be looking for that self-reported attribution, and you've probably just got to be trying to pick it up in conversations that your sales team have with that person, finding out more about the customer journey. You're going to have to pull that information out of people in customer interviews. If you hear a handful of times that they went onto Reddit to see and evaluate you versus your competitors, and that was an influential touch point for them, then that's the information you need to act there. You don't need to constantly be measuring it and trying to match every single impression to every single little thing they did. Let's just go back and put our common sense hat on, get our insights firsthand from the customers, understand which channels are important, know that it's a good channel to be in because our customers are there, and then just trust that's where we need to be and where we need to put our investment in. And just know that some of that is going to feed into probably your self-reported attribution, but it's only going to capture a small amount.
Yeah, and I think, George, you might have a great example of this. I think I saw a post from guys over at Dreamdata. They actually tested Reddit ads in particular and had mixed or potentially not great results for them. But maybe it's because of that attribution problem, isn't it, George? Maybe that when you run ads and you're trying to measure that direct attribution impact from Reddit in particular, it's really not the right channel for that sort of attribution, is it?
Yeah, that's right. They spent, I think, 3 grand or so, and they found that the CPMs were really low. I think they found they got a decent amount of traffic from it, but within Dreamdata itself, they couldn't show that there were any influenced deals that came from it. And I think if they're relying, as you said, Kev, on that last clicker conversion, then that's probably not going to show. I would also argue that they just didn't run this for long enough. You think about the average sales cycle and the normal delay, like the 6 to 12 to 18-month delay that we normally see from the advertising you do and that turning into a closed won deal. If you're just doing it with a small amount of budget over a short amount of time, you can't really judge it based on that, can you? And that's why you've absolutely got to go back to those foundational principles, understand, is it the right channel? Are our dream customers on it? What is the context of the channel? And have we tested messaging that we know resonates with that audience there? And if we know that, you've got to run it for a sustained period of time and then probably look to capture it more in that self-reported attribution. It's more unlikely to show up in your CRM as a last, first, or middle click.
Yeah, you definitely have to work your way in as well, don't you? Reddit is a fickle thing, but if you're giving that genuine helpful advice, I'm sure it'll pay off in the long run if it's the right fit for your ICP. All right, George, key takeaways for this episode. First, Reddit can work if your dream customers are there. Don't be put off by its reputation for not being very good. Related to that, the second takeaway is that it's important to realize, even if it doesn't work very well for running ads as an ads channel, it's still really important to consider it as a channel for you to work your way in, whether that's organic, engaging with the post, and really testing that being helpful in the messaging that you can use in your paid channels. It presents a very good opportunity as an organic channel for you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, listeners, if you have run Reddit or you are going to test it out, Would love to hear about your results in it and how you've put your campaigns together. Feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or at the b2bplaybook.com. Would love to check that out. As always, you can find links to everything that we discussed in the show notes. Kevin and I are so grateful that every week more and more marketers tune into the show every Monday morning. If we could ask one thing, it would be to please pass the show on to someone who you think would get value from it, and also check us out on YouTube. It's a huge help to us and we'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time, listeners. Thank you, Kevin. Take care. Catch you next week.
Thank you, George. Thank you, listeners and viewers. Take care and catch you all next week.